For anyone who grew up playing the PlayStation 1, one of the most recognizable titles was Twisted Metal. It had a very radical feel and captured that late 90s trend with other fads such as extreme sports, Legos, and the overuse of flannel. While it was edgy for the time, the gameplay still had a lighthearted and almost cartoony feel. It was for those destructive kids, the ones who like to build something and then break it. While the game may feel basic by today's standards, at the time it had a lot to offer with endless replayability. At its core, Twisted Metal was an amped up destruction derby that pitted drivers against each other in insane modded vehicles with ballistic weapons. The goal being to be the last one alive in each arena and move on. That means making sure your health bar doesn't get depleted. These vehicles were driven by crazy characters that made the game so memorable and nostalgic even to this day. Twisted Metal itself was the name of the tournament within the game, hosted by a man named Calypso. Participants entered the contest hoping to win, so they would be granted a rules-free, anything your heart desires wish. However, most of these wishes end up backfiring in the driver's face as the evil Calypso twists his words or takes the wish too literally, usually resulting in a grim ending. The series began in 1995 with the release of the first game by developer SingleTrack for the Sony PlayStation. Twisted Metal was actually inspired by the developers sitting in a traffic jam in Los Angeles, joking around, wishing they had weapons to clear the traffic. Funnily enough, when the game was first pitched, it was almost transitioned into a pizza delivery game, which is pretty far from the Twisted Metal we know now. Luckily, that didn't happen, and Twisted Metal was greenlit, along with a second title called Warhawk, with a budget of $2 million for both games. Twisted Metal, however, only used $850,000 of this budget to be completed. The first entry included 13 total characters, 12 being playable, and everybody I knew had a favorite character. These included long series staple characters such as Sweet Tooth, Mr. Grimm, and Minion. One of the shortcomings of this first title was its inclusion of only 6 maps, which even at the time felt a bit short. Even with this, and the not-so-great graphics even for the time, the game went on to become a commercial success, despite many reviews not seeing it as favorably. This called for an immediate demand for a sequel to be developed again by SingleTrack, Twisted Metal 2. While the core gameplay and plot were essentially the same, Twisted Metal 2 managed to fix most of the mistakes made in the development of the first game. This was most likely due to the development time being significantly longer than the previous game. This time, the tournament took place all around the world in unique, much bigger, but more recognizable locations, taking the level total to 8 this time. This sequel had a total of 14 contestants, 5 of them being new characters, 7 returning from the first game, and 2 unlockable characters. The graphics, however, still felt a little dated compared to other games at this time, with lots of obvious pixels and rough edges. This did not stop it from becoming a big commercial success, and in many people's eyes, the best Twisted Metal title ever released. Of course, this meant a third game was on the horizon, but this time, 989 Studios would take it instead of SingleTrack. Along with this new developer, became an entirely new game engine as SingleTrack owned the rights to the engine used in the first 2 games. This added in much sharper turns and the ability for your vehicle to flip over, along with improved graphics. This game again had 14 playable characters with 8 total levels. While Twisted Metal 3 was still considered a commercial success, it was met with much more mixed reviews than the previous title. Many longtime fans of the series blame this on the story writing, as many feel 989 Studios did not recapture the magic of the previous game's characters' endings. Instead, many of the wishes felt rushed or plain and simply dumbed down, such as Sweet Tooth wishing to eat all of the ice cream in the world. 989 Studios would then be tasked again with making another Twisted Metal game. Twisted Metal 4 was then released in 1999, but only in North America. This was notably the first game in the series to allow the player to create their own custom vehicles. Also, many of the 22 playable characters featured in this title were newer characters that have not appeared in a title since, such as Crusher, Moonbuggy, Trashman, Microblast, and even Rob Zombie himself. This game followed a trend and included 8 levels in its main storyline, but incorporated a few strange levels such as the bedroom, which features drivers shrunk down to toy size. Twisted Metal 4, like 3, was again met with mixed reviews from critics, criticizing the graphics, physics problems, but noting it was a huge leap forward over the third title. Around this time, the PlayStation 2 console was released, and another Twisted Metal game was to be made for it. This is, of course, arguably the most recognizable release in the series, Twisted Metal Black. It was released in 2001 and was the first game to have a mature rating and a much darker adult tone than previous entries. This darker tone was really brought forward by revealing many of the contestants were actually patients from an insane asylum and wanted some sort of revenge. This game was developed by Incognito, who were comprised of many of the developers from Single Track, and with the release of Twisted Metal Black, 3 or 4 were no longer considered canon. While Black took a step back in total characters to 12, this time they were much more fleshed out and given videos to reveal their stories and wishes. Unlike many of the previous entries in the series, Twisted Metal Black was a commercial and critical success, and praised for its outstanding storylines and variety of weapons. Twisted Metal Black Online would also be released as a separate disc. For the first time, this allowed players to compete with other people over the PlayStation 2 network. Curiously, Sony also released a second Twisted Metal title in 2001. While originally planned for the PlayStation 2 under the name Twisted Metal Kids, it was instead called Twisted Metal Small Brawl, and was released for the PlayStation 1. This game had a much lighter and cartoony feel, featuring drivers as kids using RC cars instead of real vehicles. The tournament was just taking place inside of a neighborhood, and the storylines followed suit, being much more innocent. This game was met with mostly negative reviews, saying that you will be turned away by the graphics and childish design with no standout features. The next game in the series was released for the PSP, and was Twisted Metal Head-On. This game ignored the events of Twisted Metal 3 and 4 and picked up where the second game left off. This game featured all of the characters returning from the second game, along with some new ones, and again took place all over the world. For many, this game felt nostalgic and recaptured some of the magic of the early Twisted Metal titles. Head-On was developed by a new game company called Eat, Sleep, Play, headed by David Jaffe, the creator of the first 2 games. Head-On that would then be re-released for the PlayStation 2 a couple years later as Twisted Metal Head-On Extra Twisted Edition, and featured an unfinished, unreleased version of Twisted Metal Black 2 called Twisted Metal Lost. Eat, Sleep, Play would then go on to create one more Twisted Metal title for the PlayStation 3, which is the most current release to date. This game, nicknamed Twisted Metal 2012, was meant to be a reboot for the series, and for the first time changed the story mode layout to instead focus on 3 characters. All of the vehicles were split up between 4 factions, which meant that each vehicle no longer had a unique driver. While the game received generally positive reviews, its biggest criticism was that the previous installments featured many more playable characters, each with their own story. The game also featured competitive online multiplayer, however, there was a significant drop-off after its initial release. Since 2012, there have been a handful of canceled Twisted Metal projects, including a potential movie, but few of them ever even making it to an announcement. After the lukewarm reception to the 2012 title, Sony felt there just wasn't a large enough fan base to justify another release. That is, of course, until 2019, when rumors were revealed that Netflix was working on a TV series based off of Twisted Metal, with a companion game to be released. David Jaffe, the original creator of the series, said that he would be surprised if these rumors were true, as it would take too much money to reposition the series to today's gaming audience. The TV series, however, was confirmed, but instead was to be filmed by Peacock, with filming starting in May 2022. We will have to wait and see how this TV series pans out, and if it successfully revives the Twisted Metal name. Not many game series can successfully withstand the test of time, and although Twisted Metal has struggled to do that at certain points, it is still a very recognizable name for anyone who played the games during the PlayStation 1 and 2 era. For now, we'll just have to hold our breath and see what's next.